So, welcome to another show. Today we have Indra Rinzler on the show, who is a spiritual advocate. So, welcome to today's show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So, the word spirituality is thrown around quite a lot these days, and probably kept separate from religion in some ways. What does spirituality mean to you specifically?
Of spirit. So it's spirit would be things you can't see. That it's not the physical plane, but it's the things you don't see, whether it's intuition or whether it's uh, divinity, or whether it's well, I'm not. I think maybe that covers it. I mean, it's just a spirituality is talking about the higher self, the everything beyond the mundane, sticky duality.
So, it's more about the sensory perception, the empirical maybe argument that what we feel in terms of spirituality, as you said, intuition, gut instinct, that feeling of we need to find our own path, as opposed to more scientific and physical evidence. Would you say?
Well, it's kind of an interesting question because you ask me what it is, and then you start asking me questions, and of course I'm going to start hedging and saying no, it's more than that. But I mean, the science starting to prove spirituality, and I think that I guess there's different levels of planes, and so the what do they call it, the 3D plane is sort of the physical plane, and when you get beyond that, then we're starting to talk about spirituality. I think that when you're not talking about spirituality, I kind of think that there is only the spiritual path. People say you leave the spiritual path, and I say, what else is there? Where else can you go? Includes the physical plane, but it is really more of, it's not about how to get groceries on your dining room table. It's more about anything else that's sort of a higher vibration, rather feeling good and feeling whole and intuition and all of the kinds of aspects that we get into when we have let me think. It's like self-esteem, and people can't really accomplish. People block themselves because they're trying to attain a goal, but the thought that they can't attain the goal is blocking them from attaining the goal. And so that's kind of because you can't quite see it, it's into spirituality. And it's just sort of a way of looking at things that has a bigger picture than sort of what not to say anything bad about cavemen, but the sort of caveman sort of attitude is sort of very linear, and anything beyond that sort of gets spirituality. I don't really want to limit it to anything. That it's a way of looking that sees the possibilities rather than limited to what is, and very dense thinking.
So, what you're saying is it's not about a destination per se; it's about a journey. So, it's not about focusing on the goal, but it's about.
Well, yeah, that's one of the memes that's out there. Sure, I think that there's some reality there. Absolutely, to
So,
that.
if we think of a spiritual journey, then it's something that obviously you're an advocate that everyone should undertake. Is there generic parts of that journey, or is it bespoke to an individual? And maybe you would talk about your own journey, maybe in this part, to explain what you've been through and what you've sort of learned.
So I'm not clear what you're saying. You want me to talk about my
Yeah. So,
journey?
is
I
is
mean, it's
is,
all of
is a
that.
spiritual journey generic, or is it specific? And if it is specific, we
Oh,
want to talk about your specific journey.
oh no, it's specific. My journey, spiritual journey is specific to me. But with my client this morning, I talked about my specific journey in order to be able to help her with her spiritual journey. And so it kind of overlaps, that there is, since everything is connected, there isn't really a way to talk about it without it having relevance to everybody else. It's the interconnectedness of everything. That's sort of the beauty of the spiritual, that there is no self distinction. There are no boundaries.
So does it differ based on personality or where people are starting from?
Well, everybody started at the same place, but that doesn't mean that everybody's at the same place right now. Personalities, everybody, the spiritual journey will be different based on different personalities, but the process is the same. Whether you're using oil paint or acrylic or watercolor, you're still brush to canvas, but it's just that the material is slightly different. So the reality of it is that what you need to do in order to wake up and what I need to do to wake up, there probably are some commonalities, but there also are some differences, especially in this moment, because we have different experiences and different age and different backgrounds. And that is, none of that is either either good nor bad. It just is. There isn't any level of distinction other than the fact that sometimes it's quicker to go north to get to a place, and sometimes it's easier to go south to get to a place. And it's just everybody gets into distinctions that are meaningless.
But I know that you use an enneagram personality wheel, don't you?
Yes,
And what's the reason behind that then? If
absolutely.
so, are there certain things that you look for? And if so, how does that differ when you allocate someone with a personality type, let's say?
So the Enneagram of personality is a teaching about 60 years old, and it says that there are 9 personality. And while they have a psychological basis and are considered uh, quite often on a psychological basis, there is no end game to psychology other than observing behavior. But as a spiritual tool, it is unique because it gives us each one of the 9 personality types. One of them is at our core, and it's our lens to navigate life. It's our core strategies. It gives us the particular frequency or level of behavior that we need to use to open the door to realization. Now, that doesn't mean that my door isn't better than your door, but I have particular needs at my personality, and you have particular needs and strategies at your personality, and so we need to we need to by being specific that way, it really helps people to understand more of their motivation, the motivation behind behavior. That really the key is only for understanding, and the fact is we do a different strategy, just like we talk different languages. Necessarily you and I who have a different accent, but if we're going to talk French, we're going to talk French, and we're going to go to Greece and they're going to talk Greek. So we're still communicating, and we're still trying to communicate, but we're using a different language. The Enneagram is pointing out that there are 9 personality types and helping us to understand which one is at our core, and that's our core strategies.
But are there certain fundamentals that extrapolate across all personality types? So, for example, gratitude being one potentially, or is it very specific?
Well, wants to be appreciated. So there are definitely things that go across that, but they express it differently, and they need it differently, and there's a different weighting. Where the one is the perfectionist and getting things right are really important to them. I kind of think everything's right no matter what. I'm a 7, and I'm not really rotating on that whole rightness thing. And 2 wants to be helping, that their core story is helping. And while I help you, I'm willing to help anybody. It's not at my core that I need to be recognized for this helping. And so um uh yeah, it's the way that it's just the way that it is that you want you want your toast in piece. Somebody wants it cut at the hypotenuse, and somebody else wants it cut in half so that the 2 pieces are equal, and they're neither right nor wrong. style. It's when we get obsessive about not having it the right way that we're triggering that's when we're going to start to talk about it. And no, Enneagram is not talking about the way we cut our bread. It was just an example.
So on that basis, then you seem to, again, I'm just extrapolating what you said. You think that whatever happens for a reason, and that, like Marcus Aurelius says, if whatever happened for a reason because nature did it and that was right. Or if we look at Lao Tzu's work, the Tao Te Ching, saying that actually, if we look at Taoism, we need to let things sort of happen and act less. Essentially, are you an advocate for that, or have you got your own views?
Yeah. Let's see. I think we have a free will, but I read in a book recently that the time of birth, the time of death is set, but how we get there is yet to be determined. And so I think there's free will. I think that people do things compulsively, and I think people do things on a whim and they don't know. I don't know where I'm going to go to dinner tonight, and it may be predetermined, but it's not predetermined like by me. I used to say, people would say, your kids planned, and that's yes, but not by us.
So you're saying that
So at least not
so
consciously.
you're saying that someone who dies at the age of 3 was predetermined to die at the age of 3.
I'm saying that I'm not at a level where I could say that's for sure, but I did read it in a book on someone that I trusted incredibly, and he said that the time of death is already determined. Um, I mean, I wouldn't say that that's not true, but I'm not going to live my life that I'm going to worry about whether it's this minute or the next minute. It's going to come when it's going to come, and I'm going to catch up with it when it happens. So, I'm not so philosophical to kind of ponder things, being heavy about pondering all of these realities. I'm much more about living in the moment and just moment to moment and just being with what is. And I find that when I do that, not only do good things happen, but that there's just a lot more peace. And I talk a lot about with people, with clients, about having expectations and attachments and holding on to positionalities, and none of those are any good. I mean, they serve a function for a while. So I mean, we can't, we have them and that's okay. But after we get to, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and 60s, and 70s, when people are trying to get happy and trying to look for solutions, I don't find that holding on to those are particularly helpful.
So you say, do we or should we sail through life as opposed to row against the tide? If we're getting pushed in a direction, is it like the hero's journey where we have to learn some things and go through from the mentor and come back to reality? Is it a bit like that? Or again, is it something completely separate?
Well, there's no so there are no shoulds. So I'm not gonna touch that part of it. And hero's journey, it's, my friend, I'm not that philosophical and I'm not so ponderous about these questions. It's the journey of into itself, and whether it's a hero or not. I would say, push to the shove, I'm not so much into the hero's journey, because that becomes a weight, and it becomes that, like, it's an architecture that we are, an architecture and an archetype that we have to live up to. And I'm not really that. I'm much more into the not naming it. And as soon as we, the watched pot doesn't boil. So I'm not so much into naming it. I'm more into, I do name it in terms of trying to help people with their blocks and positionalities and the onto. But whether it's, the cosmic galactic, or whether it's the individual galactic, I'm just sort of more of a laissez-faire. What is, and without the labeling, I find kind of gets mental and kind of gets it stops a flow rather than keeping a flow.
But then if you don't need to name things, why is there an enneagram personality? And why is, I think you used the wheel of totality as well. And if we can't identify things, how do we then find solutions? And I know you might say that we don't need to find solutions. But evidently, if we aren't in a spiritual place, surely we need to move into a spiritual place. And if we realize one of the reasons why we're not in a spiritual place, as you alluded to earlier, maybe we're living in the future, maybe we are too focused on um, income, etc. And maybe we're not focused enough on just being in the present and enjoying ourselves. And I don't mean that in a hedonistic way, but in terms of a joyous and free, content experience.
Well, oof, I think the reality of it is that even though I said, we have I tried to make a distinction between the mundane and the spiritual. The fact is that they are in that everything has spirituality and everything has depth and everything is made of God. But there is a reality on the physical plane that people can be so mundane getting from point A to point B that they're not really considering that there is a God that is making the car work. I mean, every time I use the internet, I consider it a miracle. We say, well, the internet isn't very good today, but I mean, it's such a miracle that we're, well, 6,000 miles away, 5,000 miles away, and here we are talking, and we're acting like it's no big deal. And so, I mean, that's a downright miracle. So I'm not so much of the trying to label and trying to understand. I'm more of the flow. That as I want to understand my own energy, and I want to understand my own reactions, and I want to understand what's happening in me, and I find that kind of that I can kind of bet on that. And I keep having a bit, when I bet on that, I keep having a bigger pile in front of me of the good chips, like I'm playing a casino game or something, that if I just bet on my own ability to be able to understand. The Enneagram personality they have names and they have numbers. And the names and the numbers are only nomenclature in order to understand. But there does seem to be 9 different personality types, just like there are 200 species of dogs, and there are 400 species of birds. I'm just making up numbers. And there seem to be 9 personality types. And the value of that is that if we all had the same personality type, not so much would get done. We're a social species, like the 5s, maybe like you, and we need the enthusiasts like me as a 7, and we need the peacemakers of the 9s, and we need the perfectionists of the 1s, and we need the helpers of the 2s, and the other a few other ones that I didn't mention. And we are all going through a similar dance, but the dance is slightly different because their particular perceptions and their particular needs are slightly different. Just like right now, it's getting dark here, and in home in California where I'm not, it's 3 a.m. They're not awake, and it's not light, and it's not that life is different there. It's just a different timing, and it's a different focus, just like the person.
But then do we need, to have stars in the sky, we need the darkness, we need the black of the sky. Do to have people who are spiritual and those who are authentic and those who are decent human beings, do we need the inverse as well? To have God, do you need Satan? Do you need equal and opposites? Because at the end of the day, everything has its yin and yang, doesn't it? And not everyone can be great human beings necessarily.
Well, I'm not, I'm the Satan side, but I will agree with you. I mean, the concept is totally true, that it's only when we know pain that we can know happiness. If we don't have pain, then we can't know happiness. We need to suffer in order to grow. And so they are not actually two, they're actually one. It's 2 sides of the same coin. And ultimately, they are the same coin, that when you get to a higher level, the saints who had cancer were not complaining about their health. They did not see it as a suffering. Is just of what it was just a stage.
Yeah.
And life and not life the same way, or embodied life and unembodied life, I didn't really see it any different either. And so ultimately, we can see everything as one and not see any separation ultimately in anything.
Yeah, it reminds me of the one of the quotes from the Tao Te Ching where it's like nature in itself doesn't want rewards for things. It's something along the lines of creating yet not possessing, working yet not taking credit. Work is done, then forgotten, therefore it lasts forever. Is that what you're saying? That we shouldn't be aiming towards something? We should just do it, forget about it, get rid of ego, get rid of our need for material things, and just be part of this universe, essentially.
No, I'm not saying that. First of all, I wouldn't say should about anything. And second of all, we need the ego. We just don't need to listen to the ego. And we need to go through the pains, and we need to have the low to appreciate the high cycles. And we don't need to enlighten. We can live a life without even knowing the word. But the point is that there comes a time when if you've had really cheap beer and then you taste a really nice beer, you might next time want to try you want to keep, if somebody says, which kind of beer do you want, you might say, I want the nicer beer. And it isn't that the bad beer, and you might have had bad beers, the cheap beers, and that's okay. But once you've tasted something that's a little bit better, you might decide that's the way you want to live. And it's no shoulds, and it's not bad if you don't. And it's just a choice. But the fact is that I think most people, when they realize happiness is available at each moment, and it isn't based on outside circumstance, most people, especially at this particular age, when the spiritual path has been around, let's say 150 years maybe, and vibrant for 50 years that I've been on it, more and more people are kind of tuning into the idea that the better the life is the happier life. Now, I'm not saying it's better, and I don't like to use that word, but I'm just saying that their goal are more interested that using my analogy, they'd be drinking the beer that tastes better, even if it costs a little bit. That's their choice. That's if they're going to make a choice, that's what they're going to go for. And the one who wants to keep drinking the cheap beer, horrible to them. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that if that's what they want to do.
Given your experience in this area, is there any sort of religion or any theology or philosophy that you feel closely fits your beliefs? So Buddhism or Hinduism or Christianity, whatever it's going to be, is there anything that you feel closely fits your view, or is yours very bespoke?
So I had a teacher that said she wasn't into any isms, and I guess I kind of agree with. I love Buddhism, and I'm in India, and I like Hinduism, and I love Muhammad. I mean, when you read some of the from stuff and read about him and what they did, and you go hang out in front of architecture with the repeated patterns. I mean, it's really powerful. I was in the Hagia Sophia, and they had a 800th anniversary of Rumi and stuff and everything. It's pretty high stuff. So I mean, I'm not, but it's not. I'm not much into labels. I'm not into any particular. I mean, if I had to choose, sometimes I call myself a shaman, a Sufi shaman, uh, 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 I can't think of the term right now. The bodhisattva, a shaman bodhisattva, and then I'll just simplify it to say I'm a mystic. So, never study. I consider myself a shaman, but I've never studied shamanism, and I'm a Sufi, but I've never really studied Sufism. And so, and I love, and I, uh, Kubla, Genghis Khan. I spent a month in Mongolia, and the Genghis Khan going to the river. His spirituality was hanging out of the river and making his big decisions. And I'm not for killing people the way the Mongols did. necessarily, but they had actually a rather high culture, and it was the biggest empire the world has ever seen. And in 1300s, they could deliver a letter 2,000 miles in 10 days. And so people get into good and bad and right and wrong and, oh my God, what are you doing? What didn't he do? But the fact is that there's height in everything, and there's low in everything. And so I just don't get into a particular label or a particular path. No, I'm not really into any of it. I've kind of run away from all of it. Maybe that's my problem. I don't really want the label.
So if we don't have labels, we don't have things that we particularly follow. Is there any practical advice for anyone, or is it just a case of going with your gut instinct and seeing how things go?
Well, there is one practical advice that I share with people is something that came to me that I call the four doorways to conscious living. The first way is to learn to observe. That's to watch your own thinking and watch your own behavior and watch your reaction to other people's thinking and behavior, and get out of the movie of your life and get into the audience to watch yourself dispassionately. The second doorway is to let go and release what doesn't serve you. The third doorway is to love yourself. And the fourth doorway, live in the moment. And so that's about as hierarchical as I get. I do have philosophies, I suppose you might call them, and they're basically to teach people to understand what is happening right here, right now, in order to get them to be really clear about, uh, you know, the goal is I want a career, and the problem is they don't think they deserve it, and so that's the philosophy. And I don't necessarily come in, while there are a lot of things that I've repeated to clients over the years. The fact is that in most cases, it's their higher self that's telling me what to say. So in other words, in all of the, you know, got 100 memes that I might have used, which ones I say depend on what the person is, depending on how my mood in the morning. It's not depending on whether I'm wearing a red shirt or a blue shirt. It's depending on what it is that they're pulling out of me and what needs to be said in the moment.
So you mentioned that, well, a couple of things there, but I think maybe a Bruce Lee quotes sums this up, is it not about daily increase, but about daily decrease, removing things that we don't need from your life, which is, I think, your third point, wasn't it, in the four pillars? Remove what you don't need and what doesn't
The
serve
third
you. Is
point,
that,
the
is
third
that a
point was
really
love
important?
yourself, not the
So go on.
uh, say the second point is let go and release what doesn't serve you. So
Yeah,
what is
that's
your
it. Yeah, so
question?
that was the second point. Sorry. Yeah, so Bruce Lee has that quote, doesn't he? That it's not about daily increase; it's about daily decrease. Is it about removing things that we don't no longer need? That's actually going to help us more than trying to gain things all the time.
Well, I mean, I think, the whole, is it the cup half full or half empty? But the reality of it is they're already enlightened. That it's a pretty small percentage. And so what prevents us from realizing that we are enlightened is to get the blocks out of the way. So in the sense, I would agree with that, in the sense and that's a lot of what I do, is helping to people to realize what blocks are in the way, that they put in the way, that they, because once they get out of the way, then the answers come, and the intuition comes, and the solutions come, and the enlightenment, which is already there, comes apparent. And so yes, but I could probably say it in a way that it's maybe I could figure out a way to say it in the other side, is that it's becoming more of who you already are. It's becoming more of the enlightened. It's becoming more of the it's becoming more of the love. It's becoming more in the moment. And because it's the same, it doesn't really matter whether so there's some teachings that say we got to go up, and there's some teachings we say that we got to go down. So what's the truth? The truth is that it's just nomenclature. It doesn't really matter. If we go up far enough, then we go down. If we go down far enough, then we come up. So we can't get so stuck in the nomenclature because we're just moving in circles, and so it's just all used to a process or a reality for people. People already know the puzzle part is put them together. All the teachings I do help them to put them together. I say things, I say some things that are new, but most of what they say, if I say that you're insecure, they say, I already know that. I say the insecurity is what's blocking your path, and they say, I already know that. I had a client yesterday who said that is grappling with her life in mid-50s, and what am I going to do, da 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 da, and she finally realized that she sat in her bed and realized that all she wanted to do was to know God, but she had kind of lost it for 40 years. And in the moment of coming back to that, the truth was already there. And when you talk about higher level things with people, and you bring them to a higher level, and you get out of you're not on survival mode, your attitudes are blocking you, then all of a sudden the realization comes, wait a minute, I had this experience when I was 16, and I just had kind of a Rip Van Winkle dream for the last 40 years, and it's time to let go of all of that. I want to get back to my truth.
So have you ever had any sort of supernatural or extremely powerful spiritual experiences that changed you?
Well, yeah, I have not had these, the whole world blew up, and, God was at my feet. I haven't had any of those that some of the big ones that people have. But I mean, in a sense, every day I have them. But I spent Bodh Gaya, where Buddha, where the Bodhi tree is, where Buddha found enlightenment, as the story goes, and that was a pretty powerful place. And yes, they changed me, But I mean, every day that you walk on the street, I don't know how much time you spend in India, but every day I've been 25 years. And every day I walk on the streets, I see, if I sometimes I see things I've never seen before. And every day you changes you. You walk past there's a kind of a beggar guy here who doesn't have any arms and legs. And every time I walk past him, which isn't that often, smiling, it changes me. It reminds me that I tell people is that they say my life is terrible. And I say, I know a guy that has no arms and legs and he's smiling. Say, wow, maybe I need to let go a little bit. And so where I'm living at now, and I don't mean physically, I mean spiritually, is that every moment it's a ever new expression of and of an understanding. Where I'm at in Rishikesh is a very high place, but I tell people for the last 22 years, people have been complaining about the prices, the buildings, more people, the traffic, and people do that now. And I say it's been going on for 22 years here, and I come back after 4.5 years because I hadn't been here in COVID, and I don't hear any of the noise, and I see the buildings, but they don't register, and I see some changes. And I just think it's just so much magic here that I don't even notice any of it. And it doesn't really touch me in the sense of it doesn't bring me down, and it doesn't worry me, and I'm not worried about the future and the planet. I'm just in the moment, and everything is just bliss the time of my life. And I've been coming here 25 years. And most people I know don't come back because it's too modern. And I'm thinking, I'm so sorry for them, because while it is modern, it's still God. And that it's a delightful place. I call this place, it's like the parents are gone all weekend, all the time. You know what I mean? It's like it's so free. You can be whoever you are. You can do whatever you do, and it's India. Nobody cares. And it's like when you live that way, and you live in that freedom, and you're not hassled by convention, which is kind of India's thing. Then you learn is that when I go back home, I have to learn to not be taken down by the convention. And that happened to me a long time ago, that whether I'm in India or whether I'm in America or wherever I am, any of the 56 countries I've been to, it's the same person that's having that experience, is that I'm not, I mean, maybe I could get in some situations that bum me out. I got kind of bummed out that the airline canceled my flight a day before and then spent 3 weeks not giving me a refund. At that, and I told them I'm going to complain to the Indian government. And I got a letter today on my 3-week anniversary when I told them that I was going to complain, and they said, your refund is going through. And so, it kind of that was a little bit of like the worst, in I don't know, a year, 6 months, 2 weeks. I don't know. I don't really have that much anymore, but it was I could feel it churn a little bit. And how I dealt with it, I should say for the listeners, how I dealt with it is very direct. I came back, I was in a meditation up at a temple, and I could really was starting to churn on this letter. So the only thing I could deal with it is I had to come home and write the letter. And I had to churn it, I had to get it out of my system by churning out this really long letter, knowing that it may be a useless um, um, discipline, a of time, but it didn't really care because I wanted to get the energy out of my body. And then I wrote to the agent, and I wrote to the airlines, and I told them again that by Wednesday on my 3-week anniversary, I'm going to complain to the Indian government. And with the directness of my energy, it seemed like the universe has changed a little bit.
Excellent. Is there any final pieces of
That's the
is there any final piece of advice you've got for the listeners?
final piece of advice is to love yourself, is to be in the moment and love yourself, is to understand that everything is for you and nothing is against you, and that spirit loves you, and if we don't listen to the lessons, we're going to get a harder version of the lesson, and that it's that life is beautiful and it's for living. It's not for holding back, and whatever that means for people. I really want to support that in every way that I can.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Indra, for being a valued guest. And where can people reach out to you if they need to?
So I do a website, indrarinzler.com. It's all one word. They can write me at indrarinzler@gmail.com. I do make 2 offers to people. If you want your Vedic astrology chart, send me an email with date, time, and birth of, date, place, and time. And I'll send you your chart and a little bit of explanation. And if you want to know about enneagram, send me a message about enneagram, and I'll send you a little take and start to learn which of the 9 points are yours.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again, Indra, and have a great day.